In early summer of 1980, Anne Manchester was just 3 days away from completing her final exams for her master's degree in business administration, the goal she had been working toward tirelessly. After months of intense studying, she felt ready. But Anne wouldn't be seen walking through the doors Monday morning to start a test, though. She actually would never be seen again. Before we hop into the case, a quick word from today's sponsor, which is Factor. Factor, owned by HelloFresh, offers its own unique twist on meal delivery. Unlike many traditional meal kits, Factor provides always fresh, never frozen, prepared meals delivered weekly, bringing restaurant-quality dishes to your door without the effort. For variety, I like to personally switch between Factor, HelloFresh, and Green Chef, which is also owned by HelloFresh. Factor makes mealtime effortless. No grocery runs, prep, or cooking fatigue. Each week, you'll receive chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered to your door, ready to eat after just 2 minutes in the microwave. With over 80 weekly options, including keto, calorie smart, vegan, and veggie, and more, there's something for every taste and lifestyle. As we know, life can be hectic and stressful, making it tough to maintain a healthy, active lifestyle, especially while balancing work, family, and relationships. When cooking feels like one task too many, Factor makes it easier. It is honestly hard to believe that the new year is just 2 months away. If you're setting health goals for 2026, Factor can help you stay on track with ease, making it simple to enjoy balanced, nutritious meals while working toward your goals. It's become a little bit of a tradition in my home, keeping a variety of Factor meals stocked, each of us picking our own and sitting down to enjoy them together. I've used their service for years now, and I would never recommend anything on my channel that I wouldn't spend my own money on. If you want to check out Factor yourself, you can head to factor75.com or click the link below, and remember to use code gabulosisfb50 to get 50% off plus free breakfast for a year. That's code gabulosisfb50 at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 whole year. You can also scan the QR code on the screen. Thank you, Factor, for sponsoring another video of mine. Now let's get back to the regular program. Today's case is one that I first came across from a Reddit post in the Unresolved Mysteries subreddit, which is a great subreddit that obviously has to do with unresolved mysteries. Occasionally, I will go on Reddit and I'll type in my username, which is my nickname, Gabulosis, my name here on YouTube, and I will see if anyone has mentioned me in Reddit posts of cases. And I did see that some people had brought me up hoping that I would cover this case here on my channel, which is exactly what I will be doing today. If you're new here and you don't already know this, every single year for the last 4 months of the year, I have a different series every single month, and November is No Trace November, where I cover strictly missing persons cases for the entirety of the month. This year, we're kicking off No Trace November with the unsolved disappearance of Anne Manchester. I want to start off by saying that there is not a lot of information available about this case online, but I've done my best to research and piece together a clear, cohesive story for you all. So with all that being said, let's get right into it. Anne Denise Victoria Manchester was born to parents Andrew and Joyce Manchester on June 10th of 1954. According to an article published by the News Journal in Wilmington, Delaware on July 16th of 1980, Anne grew up in Wilmington, but the family had lived in Walnut Creek, California between the years of 1961 to 1966. It seems they lived in Wilmington, moved to Walnut Creek, and then moved back to Wilmington, where Anne would graduate from Alexis I. DuPont High School and then moved on to Allegheny College, where she graduated in 1976. Anne continued her education at the University of Delaware in 1979, where she was working toward her master's degree in business administration. She was known to be ambitious, intelligent, and dedicated, traits that made her stand out both in and out of the classroom. Friends and family alike believed she had a bright future ahead of her, but tragically, Anne would never get the chance to take that next step. Just 3 days before she was scheduled to receive that master's degree, Anne disappeared, seemingly without a trace. In 1980, when this case took place, Anne was 26 years old and living alone at the Villa Belmont Apartments in Newark, Delaware. Her parents lived roughly 14 and a half miles away at 18 Harlech Drive in Wilmington. Her parents lived not far from the Hercules Country Club, with her father working as an engineer for Hercules Inc. Andrew and Joyce Manchester took a vacation during the summer of 1980, and when they returned to the area on July 8th, they decided to give Anne a call and check up on her. She surprisingly didn't answer. And this was not like her. She always answered the phone. She was somebody who was at home quite a lot. They thought maybe that she was just busy. The next day, a Wednesday, they called again and still no answer. So they decided to head over to her third floor apartment. They found, suspiciously when they got there, that her front door had been left unlocked. This was unlike Anne. They headed inside, and within no time, they realized that Anne was nowhere to be found. We've all heard many times of the phrase, gone without a trace. That is truly this case. Anne's purse, money, bank books, keys, and cigarettes were left behind. She was also described by friends as being a car person, meaning she always took her car anywhere she went. She wasn't the type to walk or jog or bike anywhere. We know that she didn't just hop in her car and something happened to her after she arrived at her destination because her light blue Honda was left behind. Anne was described as being organized. If anything was out of order or messy in her home, it was most likely because she was in the process of doing something and would reorganize and clean it up after she was done. For instance, some books had been piled up on one of the tables in the house, almost like she had been recently flipping through them, possibly doing some studying. She was the type of person where if she decided to go somewhere, she wasn't going to leave her books sprawled out on a table. If she knew she was leaving the house, she would probably organize and close them and put them in the place that they were supposed to be, and then come back to them later. Anne's pair of flip-flops that she often wore were found under the same table as well, leading people to believe that she may have been barefoot when something happened to her. On this table, the same table, she had also left behind a half glass of diet soda. This soda had a slimy film floating on the surface, indicating it had been sitting there for a few days. Her parents began contacting her friends and classmates, desperate for any clues as to where she might have been. Unfortunately, no one had seen or heard from her in a little over a week. Realizing that something was seriously wrong, they reached out to the Newark Police Department and they officially opened an investigation into Anne's disappearance. It would be discovered that the last time anyone had seen Anne was on June 29th, 10 days before her parents stopped by her apartment and found her missing. On this day, a Sunday, a male friend of hers, not a fellow student, and someone whose name they kept private, dropped by to see Anne. This friend was questioned by authorities, was very cooperative, and stated that they left her apartment around 12:30 p.m. This friend said that at the time, Anne had been wearing cut-off blue jeans with a heart on the back and a t-shirt. No further description of the t-shirt, though. I couldn't even find what color it was. He couldn't describe the jewelry that she had on, but the Doe Network states that she was wearing a wedding band, maybe something passed down in her family, and a gold Timex watch. This was the last time that she was seen by anyone she knew. The last time that she was seen in person was by her male friend around noon. The last known contact anyone had with Anne, though, was around 2 p.m. that same afternoon. A female friend had called her, and the two spoke briefly about some school-related matters. Nothing unusual, just a quick, casual conversation. Everything about the call seemed completely normal, and there was nothing to suggest that anything was wrong. But after that moment, no one would ever hear from Anne again. If anyone had, it was never discovered by authorities or her loved ones. Although her disappearance wasn't brought to authorities until her parents arrived back home, people did take notice that Anne was not around. On the night she vanished, a severe thunderstorm had swept through the area, bringing heavy rain and kept most people indoors. Many of Anne's classmates were at home studying, preparing for the next day's exam. When June 30th arrived, Anne didn't show up for one of her final exams. A startling absence for someone so dedicated. Everyone who knew her understood that she would never have voluntarily missed this test or any of her final tests. Anne was an honors student who took her studies very seriously, and her sudden disappearance had raised concern, but it seems it wasn't enough concern to involve the police. The investigation was led by Sergeant Alex Von Cook and Detective Ronald Watson, the two primary officers assigned to Anne's case. From the beginning, both men agreed on one thing. There was absolutely no indication that Anne had any reason to leave on her own. Every person seemed to describe her as grounded, responsible, and looking forward to her future. There were no signs of instability, no personal struggles, and no hint that she had planned to just disappear. I do have to mention that for a very short period of time at the beginning of this case, authorities did consider possibly she took her own life, maybe due to stress from school, but there has never been anything to back that up. They moved on pretty quickly from this theory. Investigators also explored the possibility that someone Anne had been romantically involved with might have played a role in her disappearance. The sergeant explained that through investigating, they discovered that Anne had dated occasionally. She had a few relationships over the years, as many college students do, but there was nothing that stood out as serious or concerning. There were no ongoing relationships, no recent breakups, and no one in her romantic history who appeared to have any reason to harm her or cause her to vanish. Multiple searches of the open fields and woods surrounding Anne's apartment complex were organized, but despite the effort, no clues were uncovered, no signs of where she might have gone or what could have happened to her. Investigators distributed missing persons flyers throughout the area and spoke with local residents, hoping someone had seen or heard something unusual. Anne's information was also entered into the National Crime Information Center database in Washington. But even with all these efforts, there were still no solid leads. The first time this story hit the papers was July 16th, and after it did, some tips came in, but again, these tips led them nowhere. The initial reward was set at $1,000, with her father pleading, "We'd like to beg the person who abducted Anne to please have pity on us and let her go." No one close to her, not even authorities who didn't know her personally, thought that she left willingly. Everyone agreed that foul play must have been involved, and this was a case of abduction. Considering her car, money, shoes, and cigarettes were left behind, she either left her apartment for what she assumed would have only been a moment and someone abducted her outside of her apartment, or she opened the door for someone and they took this as an opportunity to take her. Yes, her door could have been left unlocked and someone came in that way, but it seems that she was more so the type of person to keep her door locked. Maybe she forgot this one time. We don't know. It was stated, like I said before, Anne was extremely organized, but she was also a planner. She wrote everything down in her calendar, and she was not the type to say yes to last-minute plans. So if someone that she knew came over and said, "Hey, Anne, I have this thing going on tonight. Want to come with me?" she most likely would not have just hopped in their car and headed out last minute without preparing for this outing. Anything that she had going on was going to be written down in that calendar, and there was nothing to indicate that she had any real plans for the day that she had gone missing. As time went on with no sign of her, the sense of urgency grew. On July 22nd, the family announced that the reward for information had been raised to $5,000. Anne's father made a heartbreaking plea to the public saying, "There's no startling news, and we'd like to repeat our plea to whomever abducted Anne to please release her." His words captured both the family's grief and their desperate hope that Anne was still alive out there somewhere. My heart hurts for her parents because I don't have a child myself, but I couldn't imagine knowing that while I was enjoying myself on vacation, thinking that my child was working on finishing the last few days of school, that they had really been abducted and I had no idea. That there was an entire 10-day period where she was missing and police were not notified, an investigation had not started. And as we know, the first 48 hours is so important in a disappearance, but to think that it was 10 days before she was reported missing and how much can happen in 10 days. As one Reddit user stated, "This case is local to me, but it happened before I was born and I only learned of it within the past couple of years. That being said, I am a home health nurse who has performed many visits in that apartment complex. And not only does it have an unsettling vibe, it's pretty much in the middle of the woods, as well as I-95. It would have been easy either to get Anne to somewhere relatively hidden, take 95 a few states away." I also could not find any information as to whether anyone in the apartment complex had seen or heard anything the day that she had gone missing. With how little information there is regarding this case out there, I'm going to assume that if anyone had heard or seen anything the day that she vanished, that this would have been mentioned in newspapers. More time passed though, and her family and friends waited patiently for answers. Anything at all. They still held hope that what happened to her would be uncovered, that someone out there knew something and that they would finally go to authorities. Now, several months before she went missing, Anne had quit her job as a secretary at Claymont Steel Firm. She quit so she could focus full-time on her schooling. About a year after Anne was last seen, a local newspaper reported on a disturbing rumor that had begun circulating in the community. The story claimed that Anne had been killed, placed inside a suitcase, and disposed of at the steel firm where she had once worked. That her body in a suitcase was thrown into molten steel. The rumor spread quickly, reigniting public interest in this case and giving her family a brief flicker of hope that there might finally be a lead. Although it was a horrible and gut-wrenching rumor, at least it was something to go off of. However, when police investigated the claim, they found no evidence to support it. It was just another heartbreaking dead end in a case already filled with unanswered questions. When it comes to this case, almost all of what we have today are theories and rumors that have arisen through the years because there is so little to go off of. One of these came from Facebook a few years ago and is commonly brought up when this case is discussed. It had been spread around online that a man living on the second floor of Anne's building was peculiar and reportedly used a telescope to watch his neighbors. This claim hasn't been verified, and even if it is true, it may have absolutely no connection to Anne's disappearance. It may have just been a creepy person living in the apartment complex. Then, of course, there's the question of, could she be a Jane Doe? Well, over 20 Jane Does have been ruled out as being Anne Manchester. This includes Okutna Annie, Hanover County Jane Doe, the cheerleader in the trunk, whose case I've covered here on my channel, Washoe County Jane Doe, and Gloucester Jane Doe. There's, of course, the possibility that there is a Jane Doe out there that she just hasn't been compared to yet. One newspaper article states that they even brought in psychics to help early on in the investigation, with one of the psychics stating that Anne had been killed and her body dumped in the woods near her apartment complex. Those woods, though, like I said before, had been intensely searched. With each passing year, the case of Anne Manchester seemed to grow colder. Speculation ran rampant, theories abounded, and strangers on the internet tried to piece together what had happened, but nothing brought the answers her family desperately sought. It has been 45 years since Anne went missing. Her mother did pass away at the age of 93 back on June 23rd of 2023. Anne is mentioned twice in her obituary. Joyce passed away never knowing what happened to her beloved daughter. From my findings, it seems Anne's father, Andrew, may still be alive. Andrew and Joyce were married 73 years when Joyce passed away. Anne also had a brother named David, who, from my findings, is still alive today as well. I really hope that answers in Anne's case can come one day for this family, maybe even due to a deathbed confession. Anything to bring some conclusion to this case. At the time she went missing, Anne stood between 5 feet 2 inches tall and 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighed between 110 and 115 pounds. She had brunette hair and brown eyes. She was possibly last wearing cut-off blue jeans with a heart on the back, a t-shirt, a silver wedding band, and a gold Timex watch. If Anne was alive today, she would be 71 years old. If you have any information regarding Anne Manchester's disappearance, you are urged to contact the Newark Police Department at 302-366-7111. With this case, I personally believe that with the apartment complex being a bit surrounded by woods and her being on the third floor, that possibly someone targeted her directly. Maybe a neighbor, maintenance worker, or someone who knew her personally for a bit of time. Either that or that she may have stepped out to do something like take out the trash or check the mail, and that's when she was abducted, which would explain why her home looked like she had stepped out momentarily. From everything that I read about Anne, she was a gifted and intelligent woman, and I think she would have accomplished her goals had she been given the chance. So many people move to apartment complexes because they'll be around other people, and there's that sense of community that if something goes wrong, at least there's people nearby. But that's not always the case. To think of so many other people living so close by and things like this happening and no one seeing or hearing anything, it's terrifying. Overall, at the end of the day, Anne did not deserve this fate. She deserved in the year 2025 to see 71 years old. I want to thank you all for taking a little bit of time out of your day to hear about the case of Ann Manchester. And like always, you never know who may stumble across this video, so make sure to leave some kind words for her loved ones down below in the comments. If there are any disappearance cases that you possibly want me to cover here on my channel for No Trace November, make sure to send those requests over to gabulosiscaserequests@gmail.com. I hope that you all have an amazing rest of your day wherever you are. Stay safe like always, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.